Why does it feel like there's so much negative sports card hobby sentiment these days? I would say that it should be pretty obvious. We're going to talk about it here in this video. Stick around. Hello to all my sports card collectors, investors, all of my collectibles friends. How are we doing? Another day, another video. Hope everybody is doing amazingly well. If you're new here and you just want sports card collectibles content pretty much on a daily basis or close to it, you have come to the right place, my friends. Hit all the buttons below, the subscribe, the notifications, and the like button if you like what you do here. Also, do please connect with me on Instagram, IG at SportsCardDad, and then I'm also on Twitter, the SportsCardDad. All right, let's dive right into this thing because I think that this is an important topic. Of course, as you know, watching my channel, I mostly in life, I'm an upbeat, positive person. I like to be that way. Frankly, I just think that that is kind of a good way to live. It helps me through my day and kind of just cope with different stresses. I try to find the silver lining in just about everything. And this is really no different. The hobby has been my escape after getting back to it 4 years ago, getting back into the hobby 4 years ago. And it still is. And there's still a lot of fun to be had. I am involved in it every single day, but overall sentiment has been a little bit down on the market. There's just been, negative feelings, different things. And I think that that is perfectly natural. There's a variety of different reasons why that is. And so we're going to talk about it in today's video. All right. First off, and this is in no particular order, but we will start with the lack of affordable grading in the space, coupled with great turnaround times. So as many know, PSA is really the number one grader in the space. They grade 8 or 9 times more cards every month than the rest of the other grading companies, not combined, but to that second level. They grade a lot of cards, 200,000 cards a week, 250,000 cards a week on average. They're doing almost 1 million cards every month now with the added capacity that they've done. And so the lowest price point for PSA right now is $50 per card, which if we go back during kind of the heyday of when it was, in to go ahead and grade raw cards, it was as low as $8 per card. $8 per card. And so that's why there was a massive flood of base cards and all sorts of different things. Because at $8 per card, it's like, why not? Why not grade this card? At $50 per card, it's a lot more of a decision. You really have to kind of look at what makes sense. And so will we ever get back to $8 a card? I don't think that we ever will. I'm not sure that PSA really should be motivated to get back to $8 a card. That was just so low, but who knows? Maybe. I hope so. I think that would be cool. But $15, $20 a card, I could certainly see that. And then I think too, if you are a registry person where you've got vintage commons, people aren't going to pay $50 to get their vintage commons graded. It's just not going to happen. So for those particular folks, I think there'll probably be a separate price point eventually. Maybe that is $8, for vintage commons. And that would make sense for these set builders, these set collectors. I've heard Nat Turner talk about that as being a priority. Granted, it's taken time, but the assumption I think that everybody has is that once PSA gets caught up on their backlog, which should be over the next few months, in about 3 months, 3 or 4 months roughly, that all of these things will start to open up. We'll start to hear more a lot from them on different advancements, different things that they have going on. But the main point here is PSA shut down for a period of time where really they were only doing Super Express $300 per card. So if you had high-end stuff, great. Otherwise, it was shut down. BGS has really been fairly shut down as well, where they just had kind of their higher tier that they were taking in. And so you really had the top 2 grading companies at the time. Now you have SGC that has risen up to take a lot of that business. They have a good price point. They have a great turnaround time. Some people are big fans of SGC. I've used them. I like their slabs. Some people don't like the slabs and just want to wait for PSA. Fine. CSG making moves as well. So there's a lot going on, but the main point is from 2015 going to about early 2021, grading was just smoking along, and then it just kind of abruptly stopped about 15 months ago. And so you've really got 15 months of not really having an effective buy raw to grade solution for a lot of people. There are still people buying raw to grade, but they're being very picky. They know what to look for. They know the market very well. The average Joe isn't able to do that, isn't able to grade cards, whether it be for their collection or for it to be a sort of flipping type deal. Moving on to the next bit, flipping as a whole has become less and less. Are people flipping cards? Yeah, absolutely they are. But is it the same that it was a year ago, 18 months ago? No, not even close. That whole activity has slowed down quite a bit. I feel like a lot of people did move off into NFTs, and now they're moving off to NFTs into something else or nothing at all right now. Maybe it's just holding on and just waiting and seeing. But there was a lot of flipping activity. And whether you are pro flipping or you are against flipping, I think it's kind of hypocritical. I think a lot of people fall in the middle somewhere where they are buying and selling cards. They are doing some flipping and then throwing on their I'm a collector hat while they're also flipping some cards. So I think realistically, we need some sort of healthy flipping environment. There needs to be some of it, I guess is my point. Now, if everybody is just a flipper and in just a flip, it doesn't really work as well for the ecosystem. But I think that we're kind of on the low end of the flipping. We need to kind of get back to more of an equilibrium with flippers. We need some flippers. We need some more flippers. Wasn't there a show about flippers?
They call him Flipper, faster than lightning.
Next, scammy type news. Scammy type news. Now, some would say that this has always been a thing in the hobby, and they would be correct. But when we're not in kind of a bullish, everybody's excited environment, then it puts a spotlight on stuff that is not great in the hobby. And so, of course, you're seeing a lot more and more about, breaking stuff that doesn't look right, or fake slabs or fake cards, or just scammy type stuff is kind of moving to the top of that news cycle, which is good because we need to know about it, frankly. We are kind of self-regulating as far as all that goes. And so it's important to really point out if there's, bad buyers, bad sellers, obviously fake cards and fake slabs, especially, when you've got huge sales. We talked about on My Slabs, there was a wonky sale for a Michael Jordan PSA 10 that sold for $170,000. Turned out to be an issue. We haven't really gotten the full story on that yet, but an issue with either the slab or the card. They had to void out the transaction. So it was bad enough to where they had to void out the transaction. And so those are the sorts of things that we have to get them right, because we can't have someone spending $170,000 on a fake card or a fake slab and it continues to move through the ecosystem. Supply chain issues coupled with oversized product. Supply chain issues are all over the place, and we'll move into the next part of the conversation about that as well, but it's a real thing. I mean, you look at, Panini, Upper Deck, every company, they're all having issues getting product out on time or at all. Sometimes they're just canceling product. It's very, very late thanks to supply chain issues. Is it the company's fault? I don't know. I mean, I don't have the inner workings there to know what's going on, who dropped the ball. But I do see that there's global supply chain problems. So that's certainly not helping things. So we have a release, late releases on a lot of stuff to where we talk about it, where NBA draft class, NFL draft class, the next draft class has already happened before we actually even get cards for Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields or whatever. We're waiting on a lot of stuff, to come through the pipeline. That doesn't help sentiment because people are excited about those release dates. If you go back, years and years, they're excited about kind of like, oh, there's the Prism release date, or there's Optic coming out, or whatever it might be, and it just hasn't been happening, and that's not helping. And then in turn, it's way too expensive. And some will say, hey, the market dictates pricing, fine. But, when a box of Prism football is selling, and I've seen there's sales on eBay right now. I saw sold listings at $1,599, $1,500, $1,600. And the problem though is that it's getting so diluted down with parallels to where we actually talked about it on the Comeback Card Investor on Off Centered last night, where it just there was a breaker that came out and said, hey guys, I don't feel that this year's football product is worth the price. So essentially, he didn't feel good about buying the box at $1,500, selling down spots to his customers and, acting like, everything is a hit when it's just so diluted down to where it's just everything, it's like what we talk about. Everyone gets a hit, a participation trophy that's really kind of worthless, in the end. Are there, great pulls that can come out of those boxes? Sure. But at $1,500 a box, there's going to be a lot more losers than winners in that game. And so kudos to that breaker. I can't remember who it was that I saw on IG, but I really hope to see more and more stories like that. But, the breaking space is so competitive that a lot of these guys are just trying to get product. They don't have allocation. They're trying to figure out how to do it and how to build a business around it. So fine. But, the more people buy into these breaks, expensive break spots, diluted hits, weak draft class, or whatever the case may be, it's just a compounding problem. Which brings us to our next point. Weak draft classes in the NBA and NFL recently here. This last NFL draft was, a little over a month ago. A lot of great players probably come out of that draft, but, QBs drive the NFL. And unlike last year where you did have Trevor Lawrence and you had Zach Wilson and you had Justin Fields, you had a bunch of QBs going in round one, exciting kind of hype around those guys. This year, you really had no QBs that were really being talked about. And so again, probably some really good, position players, good receivers, and different linemen coming out of the draft. But is there going to be any big time QBs? We just don't know. But there wasn't any real excitement like there was with Trevor Lawrence the year before. The NBA, you had Cade Cunningham and some of these guys, which again, I think there's going to be some good rookies that come out of it. But we just came off the back of a Zion Ja draft class. And before that, Luka and Trey. It was just kind of like, big time draft classes. And that drives an NBA market. It drives cards, especially for basketball cards. If you look back in time, LeBron James drove basketball cards back in 2003, and it was no different when you go back to the early 90s with Larry Johnson and Shaq and some of these early guys. David Robinson, the Admiral, 89-90 Hoops was a huge card. There's a lot of big-time cards. Go back to 89 Score, 89 Pro Set, where you got all the Hall of Famers, Barry Sanders, Deion Sanders, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, and the list goes on. So, draft classes matter when it comes to sports cards. There's an excitement around those guys to where it's like, oh man, I want to have some cards, want to get autos and patch stuff. So that's another big driver. Additionally, it's summertime. In summertime, historically, not as much of a busy buying opportunity, for cards. People are getting out, and it's kind of a low market. Obviously, there's people still buying cards, but people are getting out. It's summer travel. People are spending money on summer travel type stuff, family stuff, not as much on cards. And leading up to the National, and then you see kind of the National happening, and the National is supposed to be kind of like a kickstart, where we're all getting together about cards. And then to top it all off, we've got all the crazy macroeconomic inflation global stuff, which I think is the biggest factor. I think that that's really the big driver. There's a lot of unknowns here. And again, it's not necessarily that people don't love cards and they're not excited about the hobby, but there's just life things that are happening. Unemployment rates are still low, where there's still kind of talk of that recession, but then unemployment rates have been fine. So that's good. But if the unemployment rates start to really move up, if that's something that's affected people, start losing jobs, then you start to see, okay, now where do we have assets? We've got cards, we've got collectibles. Do we need those? Look, we need to put food on the table. We got to pay rent. Those are things that become affected, that can affect the market. So, and then if you are someone that, still have your job, everything is going well, you're seeing a lot of down markets, whether it be cryptocurrencies or stocks or collectibles, not even just sports cards, but graded comic books, video games, all the different parts of collectibles. You might collect all sorts of different things, and you're seeing price points move down on a lot of stuff. And so if you do have cash, you're probably sitting there kind of, for me, a little bit paralyzed, frozen.
All right, everyone, chill. Chill. Chill.
trying to figure out where is the best place to kind of put my money right now. And it's not easy. It's not an easy decision when you see a lot of movement downward. Of course, you're trying to guess, like, we can't guess the bottom, but you're trying to guess, like, all right, well, if I wait a week on that, is that going to be less? If I wait a month on this, is it going to be less? Or are we at a bottom? Everybody is trying to figure these things out. So, a lot of macroeconomic stuff going on right now that it's confusing and it's difficult, So I think that we all just need to be patient. I would say just be patient with yourselves. Take your time making any sort of purchases on the investment side, whether it be on collectibles or whether it be on equities, real estate, whatever it is. I don't think it hurts to just kind of take your time because, we are going to get on June 10th, we are due for more inflation data. June 10th is when we're due to get the May numbers, and there will be a reaction to that. June 10th is a big day. So that's coming up in 12 days, 2 weeks, whatever. If inflation is still very high, then that could be, a negative impact. If it comes down, but it's still high enough, it could also have a negative impact. Or what you could see is kind of that, people are, we're optimistic because inflation is showing that it's improving. We can't read the future. We can't, we're all speculating here. And so that's what makes it all fun, but also really tricky to figure out kind of what we're doing. So guys, let me know your thoughts. How do you feel about the hobby in general, and how are you hobbying? For me, I'm looking at more of kind of the stuff that I really enjoy. I'm a Drew Brees PC guy. So I've been buying Drew Brees cards lately where I feel like there's some good values. Vintage, which is a spot where I want to move kind of more into. It seems like a lot of people have been doing that. That's kind of the negative on vintage right now is prices still pretty high on a lot of the stuff that I'm looking for. So I haven't really seen a break yet in the type of vintage things that I'm looking for. Not to say that I'm looking for it to, go down 50% or whatever, but I just haven't seen very much movement, and I'm okay just waiting on some of that stuff. So we will see what happens, but I'm still hobbying along and still enjoying it, still watching prices, still paying attention to a lot of the stuff that I like. The fun part of the hobby hasn't changed at all for me. It's just trying to figure out, kind of reassessing, based on what's going on and figuring out where to put my chips, if you will. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments, how you're hobbying. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.